Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm excited to talk today. Follow me. We're doing some culture content. So if you follow me at Jay Doran underscore the culture man on Instagram. If you don't follow me on there, follow me because every day or so, a couple days a week, we release clips, 1 minute or less videos on topics around business, culture, leadership, something that catch your attention and help you unlearn or think new thoughts and question your own assumptions to get better. But today I'm going to elaborate on one of those, which is really why 99% of people fail in business. I think it comes down to two simple things. Although, we could focus on the symptoms. And I definitely want to share best practices, things that I have observed over time that work, things that don't, what the root of the problem is, and maybe you face this yourself or are in it right now, and it could help you kind of wake up and reorient your behaviors, your habits, your philosophy that's leading you to success or failure, whether you're feeling past failures or you're anxious about what the future is going to bring. I think the two biggest things, because we could focus on planning and who's our board of advisors and what executive coaches we have or what podcasts we're listening to like this and yada yada yada. But after interviewing hundreds and hundreds of legitimate business owners, meaning that a lot of the people that come on the Coach Runners podcast, they don't have an existence online. You never even heard of them. They're very successful. They have created families. They've come from oftentimes a huge individual adversity, interpersonal adversity, lack of resources, lack of education, lack of environment, lack of role models, um, a family in many cases, and they have businesses that support their family, support themselves. They're the millionaire next door. They're people that you've never heard of, but they build the community. They're part of their communities. They're very successful. If you're new in business, you'd want to emulate their behaviors as human beings, let alone their success. Yes, they may not be 100 billionaires, but they're successful, and you may be one of them listening to this. And what are the two reasons 99% of businesses fail? They don't succeed, is they quit. They don't stay in long enough. There's not enough sacrifice. So, but their long-term sacrifice would be I stop sacrificing when I quit, never giving up. And that doesn't mean we don't pivot. Shout out to Mark Perkins, Pivot Realty, right? He's got that mind share on pivoting. Great episode of the Culture Matters podcast. Go check him out. He has amazing things to say about pivoting, and the founder of the Necessary Entrepreneur podcast. But pivot doesn't mean you quit. What it does infer that you reevaluated, you were paying attention. You weren't Osiris in the great Egyptian myth where he stopped paying attention, and Seth, his brother, malevolence represents malevolence, evil, contempt, envy, destruction came and killed Osiris, and his son Horus had to save him by beating Seth and going to hell and giving his eyeball back. You don't, no. You want to be Horus. You want to be paying attention. You want to be courageous. You want to go into the flame, into the fire. And pivoting doesn't mean you gave up. It likely infers you were paying attention. You're in the game. You're still sacrificing. So in the long run, there's sacrifice is staying in the game. Long term, short term, it's behaviors. It's what I'm not doing. It's what you're not doing. Quarter by quarter, month by month, week by week, hour by hour, minute by minute. If you listen to 30 Days of Thought series on the Culture Matters podcast, shout out to Paul Aceto and Andrew Berman. Go and type in the Culture Matters podcast, 30 Days of Thought, Carpe Diem, Paul Aceto, Andrew Berman, or type in Paul Aceto, Lucido, Paul Lucido, Andrew Berman, Berman, and you're going to see Carpe Diem, Carpediem, I think. Carpe Diem, seize the day. We do a whole podcast on this idea of seizing the day. That's understanding the short-term sacrifice. Look at each day. You could look at the year and break it into a quarter. There's 4 quarters, 3 months in each quarter. Each month, has somewhere between less than 30 days or slightly more than 30 days. That goes, you can figure that out. Each day, well, each month is broken into 4 weeks. Each week is broken into days. Now, of course, also you could look at your week by there's like the weekdays and there's the weekend. Get so much done. We get so much done, frankly. Our team, Jenna, the whole team. I shout out to Kyle Riley and Gary and um, Anthony and everybody. There's a bunch of people I'm gonna omit, but we get a lot done on the weekends. And it's less it's definitely not a mandate. However, it is a consequence of motivation, inspiration in the sense that there's a spirit of wanting to, as opposed to putting a label of like, we're going to get this done in a month and rationalize a month. I oftentimes I'm not putting a time label on it. I'm making sure I'm less entitled in that way and just attempt to get it done as quickly as possible versus or if there's accountability, putting if we feel like it could get done in a month, asking, well, how can we get it done in a week? Like, for example, shout out to John Duffin on the Culture Matters podcast. We did an episode, I think it's Don't Quit. The Culture Matters podcast, Don't Quit. Something around quitting is the title with John Duffin, Duffin, and yours truly. And in that conversation, I had an epiphany that because I'm chasing Jay after 10,000 interviews, I'm chasing that. Well, mathematically, at that recording, I was not doing enough interviews, although I was doing what I've been told are a lot or perceived to be a lot by those around me that, you know, okay, great. They might like me and they may be judging me by what others have accomplished that could be considered competitors of our podcast as far as like interviewing and the activity of doing that. But I'm chasing me, right? I'm chasing me in the future, me after 10,000 interviews. Rule number 4 in 12 rules for life, I believe it's compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else is today. Shout out to Jordan B. Peterson. And obviously, I'm doing a lecture series on that, so look out for the introduction to that on the Culture Matters podcast. I'm comparing myself to who I was yesterday, not only to who else is someone today, because I actually do like competing, but the purpose of that is really looking at oneself. And so I'm playing this game, this infinite game, as Simon Sinek would say, his great book, Infinite Game, against myself. I'm chasing who I will be, meaning what I know I don't know, and the gulf between what I know I don't know and what I believe I know and what others agree that I know has a relationship with what I don't know that I don't know. In the future, I'm chasing that J of 10,000 interviews, and I figured out with John Duffin on the Culture Matters podcast that I was not doing, or at the rate that I was doing interviews, although others, this is why I brought others into it, tell me, oh, you do so many interviews. It's unbelievable. How do you do it? It would take 29 years. I think I would have been 59 years old, 26 years. I would have been 59 years old when I finally accomplished that goal. And you can listen to we did it live. We were talking about this live. So remember, this podcast is, and I'll go back. This podcast is about why 99% of businesses don't succeed. It's it's their relationship with value, and uh, it's their relationship with value, not time. I don't have enough time means I don't value, or it's lower on the list of value judgments. It's relationship with time, long and short. It has relationship with behavior, what I'm not doing, what I am doing, and repetition. Don't underestimate repetition and iteration. Like not quitting doesn't mean we don't pivot or innovate or reimagine or our business isn't different than we thought it would be in the beginning. See, Culture Matters has evolved in the last 8 years. And it really started just about 10 years, the idea in 2014, when I was running the team meetings at the first Fusion Gyms location at the behest of my partner, friend, a mentor in many ways. It's like, you run the team meetings. That's where the idea of Culture Matters came. Did I imagine our organization have a national presence and be on the road more than six, months and months and months out of the year in businesses, in the trenches, making things happen? No, it didn't. I imagined just helping founders and companies with their values, not being a professional firm that could compete against the big boys and the big leagues and take customers from some of the big brands that are known. I didn't envision any of that, or the products and the services that have since come from working obsessively on this and in this and through this business. Although there was vision that, yeah, culture mattered. Having David Gebler, agreed to sell me the trademark. Thanks, David. You're amazing. In 2017 or 18 or something like that, because I was putting out all that content and we connected. That came as a consequence of action and activity. And yeah, I believe that culture mattered. There was vision there because now it's ubiquitous. Where it was, it's, yeah, I would say ubiquitous and talked about. And people say, oh, culture matters. That's a great name. It's like, yeah, I thought, for whatever coincidence, destiny, that was in the cards. There was a vision, but how we have grown in this organization has come at so many reiterations and reinnovations and rethinking and unlearning. And I don't want to be the same person next year as I am today. And I am often told that I'm not. And I'm constantly unlearning. Glenn Yopes just came on the podcast. Shout out to Glenn. He talked about learn, unlearn, relearn, learn, unlearn, relearn, learn. I believe, yeah. And we share that. I've been thinking about that for years, and the purpose of the Culture Matters podcast is to uncover the genius of our guests. Dennis Yu, learn, learn, do, teach, learn, do, teach, learn, do, teach. Dennis Yu, shout out to Dennis Yu on the Culture Matters podcast. First interview in 2018 at Brad Lee's office in Lightspeed VT. When I introduced them, it was about learn, do, teach, learn, do, teach. There's this pattern of the guests, and they're the 1% of the 1% oftentimes, or the 1%, and so on, or up and coming, because it's this relationship with value and time. They never, if you never give up, you never quit, you're reimagining, reinventing your timeline. You're playing a different timeline than others. Like, I'm chasing Jay after 10,000 interviews. So to close a feedback loop, not that Janine Driver, I think she's episode 2 or 3. Shout out to Janine. She says, leave an open feedback loop. I'll tell you next time, because I got 2 minutes left in this podcast, the rest of this story. I'm going to go against that for a second and tell you the rest of that story with John Duffin. John Duffin, we were talking about don't quit. And I said, well, I can do this in 10 years. Ultimately, I'm paraphrasing. What if I do 1,000 podcasts a year? How fast would that take versus what I was doing? And so now, of course, half those will be interviews, half those will be like this, because now I'm starting to share more of my thoughts on the Culture Matters podcast to really live out, read to think, write to develop, listen to hear as unsaid, and speak till I go. At Brad's behest, shout out to Brad. Jay, you gotta speak. You stop doing your own thing. Yeah, you're right. Thanks. I took a step back, listening. Now I'm gonna speak and listen. No harm in that. And that's the role of having great people in your life, mentors. I learn from our customers all the time, our client partners all the time. It's a benefit of being a teacher, is to learn from your students, through your students, with your students. And I'm a fool not to. We're fools not to. So I think that's why Freud. I was reading this today, coincidentally. Freud, in the Freudian psychology, chapter 9 of 12 Rules for Life, which is assume that the person you listen to knows something you don't. He talked about Freud believing that psychoanalysts needed psychoanalysts so that their own blind spots, their own bias wouldn't corrupt the relationship with their client. So I learn from our students all the time and consider them mentors in many ways. It's not a top-down relationship. It's like a circle versus a block or something, or something. I'm thinking it's more of a circle than a triangle, top down. It's not the pyramids. I've totally digressed, but the point is, I could talk about, okay, in closing, who are why 99% of people will never succeed in business? The advisors aren't the ones that'll get them there. The education, reading's a cheat code, listening to audiobooks, cheat code, lectures, cheat code. Maybe they don't do it, haven't done it, no one, exposed them to it. Environment, get in the rooms, be the light, get in the rooms. Talent, the repetition, you have to put in the reps. Timing, you don't give up. I can focus on values, country, industry. But in closing, it's about sacrifice. Short term, long term. If you never stop trying, but you're innovating and reimagining, and you keep pushing forward, and you're sacrificing what you want now for what you want most, I think you're going to be successful. And even if you're not in the eyes of the world, you'll feel successful. See you next time on the Culture Matters Podcast. Follow me at Jay Doran _ the Culture Man on Instagram. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters Podcast and share this with somebody that's about to quit.